Good day to you. Today we can take a look at training and development, one of the exciting concepts in HRM. In the previous chapter we looked at some of the learning principles, how different theories work in actual practice. So how it is actually used in training and development process, let us take a look at this chapter. What are the objectives of training and development? Now, in this chapter you're going to look into the systematic approach to training, the identification of training and development needs, how do you identify, the setting of training objectives, planning issues in devising training programs, what is that you encounter in day-to-day activities when you plan training programs, the advantages and disadvantages of on-the-job and off-the-job training programs, the use of variety of on-the-job and off-the-job methods. So these are the objectives. Now let's take a look at the definition of training. Now it's a systematic development of the attitude, knowledge, skill, behavior pattern required by an individual in order to perform adequately a given task or job. Now you need to concentrate on this particular area. It's required by an individual in order to perform adequately a given task or job in order to meet the objectives of an organization. It's a systematic approach. Now to take a deeper look at what is a systematic approach, how do you go about it? Step 1 is to identify and define your training needs in line with your overall objectives. What is that particular training need or a set of training needs which you have to go forward and implement so as to get a particular outcome in line with your business objectives? Is it increased productivity or is it a changed behavior towards your customers' requirements? So you have to identify the training need. Step 2 is to design learning and development programs which meet those needs, selecting relevant methods and media. So once you identify the needs, are you going for an in-house program, or are you going to bring out a consultant, or are you going to send your team outside to an outside facility? What is the method of instruction that you're going to follow, whether you're going for e-learning? So this needs to be identified. Step 3 is implement learning events and programs. Now, once you identified, you have to implement. There is no point in identifying a method and then not implementing it. So you have to go ahead and implement within a particular timeline whatever you identified, the learning program. Step 4, systematically evaluate training. Once you've given the training, you have to evaluate whether it has met the requirements, whether the changed behavior has given you the outcome which was designed and desired. Now let's take a look at a video wherein the importance of training is emphasized and what does the young generation feel about training when it comes to selecting an employer.
According to recent research by Ernst & Young, graduates rank training and development above salary. A poll of 600 respondents showed that 41% of graduates view training and development as the most important consideration when weighing the benefits of working for a potential employer. As recently as 2007, salary was the top consideration. This change in priorities is likely a result of continued slow economic growth for employers, tempering the salary expectations of graduates and emerging leaders and leading them to place a priority on long-term career development. According to the head of graduate recruitment at Ernst & Young, despite the burden of university debts, today's graduates still see their first job as a prime opportunity to gain qualifications and skills which can benefit them long into the future. Simply put, employers who fail to focus on improving human capital are at risk of losing their most talented workers.
Now, when you're identifying your training needs, you need to keep in mind the objectives of the organization. That's, are you looking at profitability by increasing productivity or by reducing costs? The cost-effective provision of services to your customers, are you looking at this particular dimension for training? The survival and growth of the business, are you giving training for the survival of your business or it's for the growth of the business, because based on which you have to align your training requirements. Increased employee loyalty, do you want to increase out of the training program employee loyalty, because training gives special significance to the employee morale, that it's a long-term prospect. So do you want to increase employee loyalty? Enhanced corporate image, are you trying to boost your image in the marketplace, in the customers mindset, or in the mindset of your own employees? So is it the question of your corporate image? Enhanced potential for quality, innovation and flexibility. Now training needs should identify this potential for quality, innovation and flexibility. Now, training needs recognition. A company has to go for a training needs identification in the following circumstances. When a new piece of legislation is brought in, you will have to change your operational styles and your practices and your HR procedures in line with the new legislation. So you are bound to give a training program to your employees. When a new technology is adopted and implemented, you need to give a training program so that the workforce is acclimatized to the new conditions and the environment. And when you're going for certifications, let's say ISO certification or any other international standard certification, you need to have a training program wherein you have to meet certain minimum standards, so you're bound to have a training program. Now, training needs analysis, how it is defined. Now, training needs may be defined as the gap between what people should be achieving and what they actually are achieving. So there is a gap. To put it in simple terms, it is the required level of competence minus the present level of competence, which is the training needs. So there is a perceivable gap between what should be achieved and what you're currently achieving, which is existing across all levels in an organization, starting from the employees to the management level. So this is a training need, and this is how it is identified. Now, at the corporate level, analysis of corporate objectives. What are your overall corporate objectives? Analysis of existing human resource records and appraisals. This is a source wherein you will identify what are the gaps available through your human resource records and appraisals. A human resource audit or skills audit will give you the broad areas where you need to carry out your training needs identification, and based on which you will design training programs. Now, how do you go about doing this? At the group, team and individual level, first you take up a job analysis which identifies clusters of jobs and split them into parts and analyze those jobs. Next is skills analysis. What are the skills required to perform that particular job? What kind of skills you are required to identify and implement in the workplace so that the job is done in the best possible manner. Role analysis when it comes to managerial cadre, and what are the managerial competencies that you require. Existing records from the human resource department needs to be analyzed, and competence analysis based on the different competencies available for the jobs across the length and breadth of the organization. Now, how do you set training objectives? Now, knowledge, what the trainee should understand when it comes to behavior, what the trainee should be able to do, and standard to what level of performance, environment, under what conditions. So when you're setting training objectives, your ultimate aim is to bring about certain outcomes, certain desired outcomes on the following dimensions. Just like you, knowledge, what is that you want the trainee to know? Behavior, what is the most suitable behavior in a particular situation, and how do you implement it in a particular work situation? Now, standard, what is the standard expected of him in terms of performance, what is the level, and environment, what are the conditions under which his job is going to be done, and what needs to be brought out through that role. Now, planning and design decisions. How do you plan and implement a program, a training program, and plan? Based on the types of learning, you have formal and informal learning, on the job and off the job learning, self-managed learning, program learning, blended learning. Now, when it comes to the time and duration of training, you'll have to identify what is the most suitable time and duration for the training. Now, you cannot take people off from your live projects and put them in training unless and until it's so important. So you'll have to identify the best suitable time in consultation with your line managers so as the work flow is not affected, and duration, whether it's to be done in short periods or over a weekend, or is it once in a quarter. So you need to decide on the duration of your training, and you need to identify the training providers, whether they are going to be in-house or external consultants. So these are the elements involved in planning and designing training programs.